This is where business ideas and passions turn into profit. Whether you're dreaming of becoming your own boss, but don't know how to get started, or have already started a side hustle and wish to grow it exponentially, your host, Victoria Wieck, can help you turn your passion-based business ideas into profit. Welcome to Million Dollar Passion. Here is your host, world-renowned jewelry designer and home shopping TV celebrity, Victoria Wieck.
Welcome to another episode of the Million Dollar Hobbies podcast. This morning, I have an amazing guest who is going to delight all of our lives, actually. He has an amazing transformation story, as well as some actionable tips that he's going to share with us. A lot of times actionable tips can take a very long time and you're on your own, but Robert actually has tips that you can absorb in less than a minute or 1 minute exactly. And I know you all have 1 minute to invest in your future. Robert has an amazing story, like I said, and I would rather have him tell you his story, his transformation story as well than myself, because he has a very interesting way to tell his story. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Robert White to the show. Welcome to the show, Robert.
Thank you, Victoria. It's wonderful to be with you. I recall being in my late 30s, early 40s and thinking, when I get older, I don't want to be one of those old guys telling stories.
But Robert, wait. You're not old and you don't look old. And what's wrong with old guys telling stories? I love stories.
Well, I have a lot of them. I grew up in poverty. I know you have a similar background. I grew up in an abusive environment. I learned some things that I shouldn't have learned, and as many young people do from situations like that. But I think I always was ambitious. I always wanted more. I started work full time at 14, that kind of thing in my background. I think there are turning points in life. For me, a turning point was I went to a small university in my then hometown. And at the end of the first semester, during finals, I had a heart attack, and I had at 19 years old, and then again at 21 and 23, I was told I would die by 35. And that had a big impact on my life. I didn't realize that at that time, but it's a weird kind of thing, I think, particularly for men, where our physical vitality is so important to us that I've been given this death sentence. And then I had a little sales company. I was struggling. I had an early marriage and divorce. I felt guilty about it. My life was a mess. Just
Whose isn't, right? Whose isn't?
At 27, and a friend enrolled me in one of the early human potential movement trainings called Mind Dynamics. And it's a cliche all these years later, but it changed my life for the better. And what I realized is that I could own my own life. I could stop being a victim of my health, of everything that had happened. I could forgive myself, and I could go do something worthwhile with the time I had left. Well, obviously, I've lived past 35, and I can actually pass an EKG today and get life insurance. So that led to my sharing that seminar with over 400 people, because I found out that if I sent my salespeople to it, they sold more. If I enrolled my family in it, we had better relationships. So I did it selfishly because it improved my life in various ways. I tripled my income the first year after that training, and it went up 10 times the following year. And by the way, the training was not about money. It was about me and what I needed to let go of and what I needed to claim in my life. So that it was a transformational event for me. It changed everything for me. That company found out about me. I ended up getting a phone call from the founder, and 10 days later, I was president of that company. So I did spend 4 years working for someone else. And we expanded that company around the world. I had this incredible experience in my early 30s of international travel and meeting people and being challenged in different ways. The ownership of that company changed due to the death of one of the founders, and it became not a fun place for me to be. I left. I founded a company called LifeSpring. Later sold it, went to Asia, founded a company called Arc International. We have 1,300,000 graduates from those two high impact experiential learning companies. So that's been a big part of my life. I kind of retired at 46, moved to Aspen, Colorado, built a big house, bought a jet, remarried, and had 4 great children, 2 birth kids and 2 special needs kids that we adopted. I spent 6 months traveling with the late John Denver. I skied 80 days a year. I traveled to 42 countries. I just, I did the bucket list kind of thing for the poor kid from Green Bay, Wisconsin. I went way beyond bucket list. But I also got disconnected from my company. I had a big failure, very public, very embarrassing, and with a lot of learning. So that's kind of part of my story.
Well, that's great. I took some notes from that because there were a lot of nuggets just from the brief background you shared with us. Number one, from early age, your background, small town experience, Green Bay, Wisconsin, and, went to small town school. You had almost like a life altering experience, when you find out that you have a finite date you're going to live to, 35. That's kind of really traumatic news, to absorb.
Yeah.
And it does change you because, I used to volunteer quite a bit at all the hospitals. And, when somebody has a terminal disease, I mean, you really have a certain amount of days to, accomplish what you want to accomplish on Earth. So in your case, you have invested time and money to better yourself, basically the quality of life. And so it's early human potential training. And I would assume, I haven't taken the training, but I would assume that that is, that sort of training would impact your personal life, all your different facets of your life, including obviously, finances. I agree with you on that. That finances come after you sort out all the other parts. If you just chase the money, it never comes. That's a fact. And then the other thing I think that's interesting too about your background story is that, you were in corporate, you were working for somebody else for 4 years or so, but you use that time. And I think that I'm speaking to all of you who are listening right now, who are in corporate, who are making good money. A lot of you who have reached out to me say that I can't leave because my boss is paying me too much money. Well, what's too much money and how much is that worth in terms of your personal, like your health and your quality of your personal relationships, all of that. So you were there for 4 years. And so you got to kind of get the experience, figure out what's working, what's not working, all of that. You learned on somebody else's dime, basically.
Yes.
So then you went out and created 2 companies of your own, which became very successful. LifeSpring and then Arc International. Now, it's really interesting because you then went on to say that you eventually had a disconnection with the company. So you had to kind of start over. Did I get that right?
Yes. One of the co-owners had a hobby of flying antique airplanes, and he flew one of them into the side of a California mountain, and it changed everything.
Yeah. So I think, one of the things that happens in life is that, and I in my book, I actually talk about this a lot, and I write that in my upcoming book, $1 Million Hobbies, but I also talk about this in my keynote speeches, which is that sometimes when you do achieve success, we are so busy protecting that success. You don't evolve, you don't get to the next level. Or you forget to do some of the basic things that drove you in the beginning, right? So, and then in your case, you actually picked it right back up, and you are now helping other people achieve their dreams, and which I think is a beautiful thing. So you actually have 2 transformation stories, from the first one, actually 3. So let's go dive into how that is now how are you using any part of that to help other people now?
A really seminal turning point for me was founding LifeSpring. I left Mind Dynamics, started my own company. We had some good early success. And it became a place where I didn't want to go to work in the morning at the company that I founded and led, which is a very strange experience. A lot of things were working and I'm doing what I loved, but something didn't feel right. And what it was is that there's an expression, I've lived and worked abroad for 22 years of my adult life, primarily in Asia. And there's an Asian expression that fish don't describe water very well. The Zen expression.
That's a good one. I have to use that. Yeah.
Like whatever we're living in, we don't notice it. And when I was at Mondynamics, what I didn't realize is that the founder, Alexander Everett, lived very consistent with a set of a very clear purpose to his work, a very compelling vision for what was possible, and some very strong values, positive, life-affirming values. But I was just busy being a business guy, expanding the company around the world. I didn't realize the water, the space that he had created over many years. And so when I started LifeSpring, I just thought, okay, we'll have a great training. We'll sell it to people. We'll do good work in the world. That's enough. And we'll expand this thing. And what I didn't pay attention to was purpose, vision, and values. I thought people were aligned to those qualities, even though I didn't know the names at the time. And and so it became a place I didn't want to work, which is, a very strange experience. And I sold it and went on but I learned a lot from that. And today, when I work with senior executives, a lot of people have said this expression in different ways. Peter Drucker, the famous management guru, I think is more often quoted as the author. I don't think he's the author, but he gets quoted as the author, which is that culture eats strategy for lunch.
Okay.
That culture is way more important than strategy and way more important than execution. So I learned the hard way that senior executives, their primary role is actually creating culture. It is creating a positive workspace where people do their best and where there's loyalty and there's commitment to the client and, all of that stuff. Well, how does that get created? It doesn't come out of the larger culture, which is one of being a victim and blaming and, all of that complaining and all that stuff. So what are you going to do in your organization to get people aligned and focused and committed? And the answer to that is make sure that they own the organization's purpose, vision, and values. So it's turned into a product. My early failure in that area has turned into something that I work with almost daily with the senior executives that I'm privileged to mentor.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. I have worked in corporate, and I now work with a lot of corporations because most of my clients are very, I do a lot of business to business and, companies, TV stations and, whatnot. And I completely agree with that, the thing I hate as a client, as a vendor or customer or whoever going into an organization is that when they have a culture, a negative culture, a toxic culture, it's very evident. You can almost feel the air, you can almost feel the tension. People are not happy. They're worried. They're freaked out. They look like they walking around with a board, doing a checklist. They're really busy writing CYA letters. Whereas, corporate America is probably spending a third of their time in CYA meetings and emails and, Zoom calls where, 50 people are involved in. So because everybody's on the hook at that point. And I think along the line, they lose the entrepreneurial spirit of what made America so great. And, and when I say that, not just, every individual. And the other thing I want to ask you is that, do you agree that if someone is a successful corporate executive today in America or anywhere actually, that they are contributing to a multi-billion-dollar, trillion-dollar economy where they probably have all the skills that they need if they look close to start their own business and succeed. But for some reason, a lot of people in corporate America don't think they can start and succeed. So they're kind of stuck in that environment that they actually really know is toxic for them. Do you have any words of wisdom for that?
Well, what you're describing is the result of an underlying belief system that security is more important than opportunity.
Yeah, that's true.
And most of the time for us, the majority of our belief system is unconscious.
Right.
It operates for us. If we're in a supermarket, we turn the corner on an aisle and we see a woman struggling with 3 little kids, and one of them is acting up and pushing stuff off the shelves and all of that stuff. You don't have to stop and think what you're going to either do or think about that. And there's lots of different ways to respond to that, because there's an unconscious belief system in you about how to be a mom, right? And how to deal with upset. That example shows up in business in multiple ways. And if you think about all of the cushy aspects of being in a corporation, that you get that salary check every month, that you get the insurance and you get the praise, the kind of image that you maybe wanted all your life. The idea of giving that up to pursue some dream it's stopped by your own belief system. And one of the things about a belief is that once you have it, you go looking for evidence that you're right about it.
Right.
You'll start sorting for people that went out on their own and failed.
Yeah.
I've failed publicly big time. I lost $30 million. I was embarrassed. I had to fire 240 people. It was big time.
Yeah.
But I have over the years, I've trained myself, even in the midst of all that pain and all that embarrassment, that there must be value in it, that God does not present that in my life unless there's a lesson for me to learn, and that it isn't the end of my life.
No. Yeah. One of my favorite quotes is from Winston Churchill, and I'm sure my listeners are kind of tired of me saying this. But, it's one of there. I have like 3 or 4 favorite quotes, and what you're describing is Winston Churchill's quote, which says something to the effect that it's like success is not final, and failure is not fatal.
Yes.
And in your case, you actually experienced both of them, because failure obviously was not fatal for you, but also success is not final, which means that sometimes when you have success, you either tend to keep doing the same things over, or you're too busy protecting that success. Therefore, that success doesn't become final. Basically, you end up somewhere other than success, the path to success. So I think that's really interesting. But, Robert, I have to tell you that you have mentored over 1 million people between LifeSpring and ARC International.
Yes.
So if you think about it, no matter what you consider failure in that time, you've impacted at least 1 million people, and probably everybody that they then interacted with. So that's a huge impact that you've had in a way that's incredibly positive. So, what I was going to ask you is this. Most of my listeners are small business owners. A lot of them are doing 6 figures, but they can't get to the 7, or they're just on the cusp of it. Some of the things that you have mentored the senior, other people with, can you share a few actionable tips that my listeners can listen to today and apply it to their lives today in that small entrepreneur space?
Look, there are plenty of people giving advice about next steps and daily routines and things like that. My work in the organizations that I've led revolve around 3 things that add up to incredible financial success, but even more importantly, to joy and satisfaction in your life. And it's 3 steps. And there's a line from my book, Living an Extraordinary Life, that is, whenever I'm interviewed, people ask about that single line, which is that life is simple. This does not mean it's easy.
Right.
So this is simple, but it's not easy. It starts with clearing your past, completing your past. And that's letting go of blame, shame, regret, guilt, but also letting go of past success, letting go of anything that you're carrying with you that's kind of unexamined. And I'm talking about normally healthy, maybe a little neurotic people, but we're not talking about people that are mentally ill here. But carrying around blame, shame, regret, guilt, and past success is a guarantee of no future success. It's an absolute guarantee. So if you do that, the second piece is very Asian in a way, and that is to learn to better tell the truth about current reality. The Buddhists say developing a selfless regard for reality. We get into living in a story that we tell ourselves and others. And that story can be disconnected from what's real. Mm-hmm. And it can be past glories that you're living out. You know, I went to a high school reunion. What an experience!
Yeah.
One of the strangest experiences.
What were you thinking, Robert, going to the high school? That'll drive you crazy by itself.
Well, I have a very dear friend, and it was kind of part of our relationship to go together, and great fun in a lot of ways. But I recall that in my high school, I think it's true for secondary schools all over the world, there's always one guy and one girl that are famous for everything, you know? Yeah. So this girl she was beautiful. She was a cheerleader. She was the star in the school musical and all of that. So here we are 20 years later. And so the thing starts at 7:00. So what time does she arrive? It's got to be 8:00. And it was, because she's got to make the entrance, right? And she comes up to the four of us, three of my friends and myself, and she does the hair flip thing.
Oh my God! Still, I mean,
still,
that is still, like so out. That was so yesterday.
Yes, exactly. And anyway, that story kind of goes on and has a lot of laughter in it. But the point is that she's not describing current reality well, right? And it's also true in business. We think, our business is okay and we're doing the right things. But an outsider comes in, and there are those reality TV shows with restaurants, right, where the guy comes in and just tells the truth. Yeah. Like the brutal truth about how people are operating their restaurant. So we have this tendency, like fish don't describe water very well, to live in a false life, actually. Right. So that's the second piece of the formula. First, complete your past and let go of it. Secondly, learn to better tell the truth about your current reality. Right. And not from a standpoint of blaming yourself further or feeling guilty or feeling good or bad. It isn't that. It's just tell the truth about your current reality. If you do those two things, you create an opening for developing a compelling future for yourself, a vision that is compelling to yourself and others, that gets you up in the morning, that inspires people, that inspires a vendor to give you good terms or perform, that inspires somebody to join your company. I think that's going to be a big issue in building companies today, is attracting people, because it's a tough market out there to get great people and then to keep them. And a compelling vision is, in my experience and working with our clients, is important. So those three things, whether you have a $100,000 business or $100 million business, I think on the personal side of things, you need to complete your past. You need to get better at telling the truth and getting feedback. And thirdly, you better have a compelling vision, one that motivates you and brings people to you.
And I would add a fourth thing to that, and that, or maybe addendum to the third, which that compelling vision can't really be only about money, can it?
No, it has to be about contribution. It's got to be win-win. It's got to be, because that's compelling. If you talk to these real experts that have surveyed people in these large corporations who are being paid very well, you find out money is not a motivator.
It's not.
No, do they believe in what they're doing? And they can only believe in what they're doing if they see it as a contribution.
Yeah,
And,
I 100% agree with that. I think that, and I told you earlier that many of my listeners want me to talk a little bit about how I started my business, which I'm not going to do on this show, but because I do every other episode is, me talking to them directly. But I, on that one point though, about not being about money, I will say that I started my company with $30 or less than that, maybe. I didn't have the whole thing. But, I was willing to live on almost nothing. I mean, I was willing to live on, my home run scenario, my compelling vision at that time was making $3,000 a month, $36,000 a year, doing what I want to do, which is, creative business. It's pretty tough to make a living doing that. And then spend a lot of time, be able to spend time with my family. So I wanted to have, basically work the quirky hours. So, and then I created an empire that's much bigger than that. But oftentimes I think if you focus on the right things, which is what you were saying is when you clear your path, your path, then you don't have all the baggage from either successes or failures or negativity that has been, thrown at you, or you have been living, as a child. And then you come up with, an environment where you can be successful. At that point, the only way you really make money, the only way money comes to you is if you add value to other human beings, right? So I think that I think we're all in sync with that. And the other thing I will say too is having gone through that myself, what I was thinking, thank God that my plan B actually didn't have to kick in here, but what I was thinking is like, if I go on this path and I do what I want to do and I can create the best designs in the world and I can create it, bring it at very affordable prices where, people don't have to pay like a BS factor, of, the name brand. At least even if I fail to make any money, at least I've enjoyed my life and that, I've enjoyed the process. At least my family had a happy mom, and happy wife. So for me, that was enough. Yes. And in the rest kind of fell in place. So I think what you're preaching is something that what you're coaching and preaching and mentoring is something that I can completely relate to. And many of you who had asked me about my own journey, the book is all there, but I would say that what Robert is saying is actually literally almost right on the money. I didn't take his mentorship programs, but and I didn't actually have any idea what I was doing. Just trust me, I had no idea what I was doing. I was just simply surviving. But because I was so poor and I had no options, that the only thing I could do was, kind of rely on myself and what I think I could do what I think I could live with, pretty much. So, I pretty much like decided that even if everything fails, I still wanted to be a happy person at the end, So I really enjoyed everything you've said, and I would highly encourage all of you to go and pick up a copy of Robert's book called "Living an Extraordinary Life." Believe me, this man has lived an extraordinary life. He's lived in, some exotic locations, and I really love that, Robert, because as a my background coming from South Korea to America. And I think, being that poor immigrant was actually a great blessing because you start with nothing, you start with no past, right? Because whatever past I had in South Korea didn't matter here. Right. So I didn't speak English, so I couldn't tell anybody how great I was. And if, I'm not that kind of person anyway, but, I'm actually a real introvert. I've had to learn to speak because I make a living on TV, but I think that was really great. But the other thing I was going to say is like, if you don't travel, if by traveling, today Robert quoted from several quotes that he has quoted, fish don't discover water well. Okay. These things are things that in Asia, it's almost like a common knowledge, or they have so many sayings, right? So yes. You're blessed. I think that living in other places where you are having to adapt to different cultures, different ways, it's all, it enriches your life. Yes. You know what I mean? It enriches your life because you're seeing a whole other perspective sometimes that, if you're in the water, you don't see other waters, right? So you actually have an amazing experience in that. And I just really applaud you for living abroad for 22 years, because when you travel to, every country I've ever traveled to, I've learned something new that has shaped my life. So when Robert is, mentoring anyone or coaching, I just think that there is layers and layers of wisdom that you don't find. I also find this interesting, and I'm not cutting anybody down, but I was so busy making a living, being a mom and being a daughter-in-law, all of those duties that I have. But when I ventured into a little bit of the coaching space, I was surprised how many coaches have never actually started a business. They're coaching business coach strategy sessions. How many people have never actually lived anywhere, have never gone through obstacles or anything? They were born as silver spoon and they're coaching like mental toughness. And I'm like, how are you, qualified to teach any of this, right? So I think you actually have so much to offer. I just thank you for everything that you have shared with me here and my audience. Is there anything else you want to add to this, or you want to leave with, and then also how do people get a hold of you, and how can they connect with you to learn more about your philosophy, your coaching and mentorship?
Yeah. It's all about relationship, and that's what's important to me in my life right now. Simply connecting with people, and then we find out if there's something we're supposed to do together or not. Maybe we're just supposed to be friends and learn from each other. I do offer, I'll offer your listeners a gift. I've worked for 30 years to kind of figure out life and what does living an extraordinary life require. So that I have a 28-page PDF that I'm happy to send to people, and it's shareable. They can send it to their friends and family, and it's available at extraordinarypeople.com, extraordinarypeople.com, which is my website. And what they'll also receive is my weekly email, which is called An Extraordinary Minute with Robert White, where that's that 1 minute piece of learning per week. And that hopefully it's a contribution. But what it sets up is a communication between me and a lot of people. Yeah. I've been doing it for 12 years, and there's several thousand people that participate in it. You can easily hit reply, and I answer most emails. But it's a way to stay in touch, find out more about each other, and also to contribute. So extraordinarypeople.com, and just sign up, register for the free weekly An Extraordinary Minute. And you'll also get this document that I've worked for a lot of years to create.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing that. And many of you, like I said, 1 million graduates to the 2 programs that he founded. And I got to tell you, you can fool a person or 2 or 3, but 1 million people is a lot of people to impact. So consider that. And as I said, Robert, just really, really sort of personified all the things that I wish I actually had a mentor like you when I started, because I was on my own, and I kind of learned all of that stuff kind of by trial and error. And, it's just a very, very, I think you can collapse time for people to get their happiness eventually faster. So thank you so much. And until next time, stay happy and healthy. And remember, happiness is your choice. And I hope you make great choices. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to $1 Million Passion, where we turn dreams into reality and passion into profit. According to ancient Chinese proverb, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Congratulations on taking that first step today. For more information on how Victoria can help you turn your business idea into $1 million, and to download Victoria's free ebook on passion-based business ideas, visit milliondollarpassion.com. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast player.